The day I hired a skywriter to expose my cheating husband during his company's biggest outdoor event wasn't even the best part of my revenge plan. That was just the beginning. You know those perfect marriages you see on Instagram? The ones with matching Christmas pajamas and weekly date nights? That was us. James and I were that couple for 12 years. The kind people love to hate because everything seemed so perfect. Until I found lipstick on his collar. Yeah, I know, the most cliché way to catch a cheater. But here's what makes this story different. I didn't confront him right away. Instead, I spent 6 months planning the most elaborate revenge anyone in our small town had ever seen. It started on a regular Tuesday in March. James had been working late, again. Nothing unusual there. He was a senior partner at Mitchell & Ross law firm, one of the biggest firms in Boston. Late nights came with the territory. At least, that's what I told myself. I was doing laundry when I found it. A bright red smudge on his white collar. The thing is, I don't wear red lipstick. Never have. James always said he hated how red lipstick left marks on coffee cups. Funny how specific that preference was, looking back now. But the lipstick wasn't what convinced me. No, it was what happened next. I started noticing things. Small things. Like how his phone would always be face down. How he'd step out of rooms to take calls. How his late nights at the office never showed up on the firm's billing system. Yeah, I had access to that. Being the one who handled our taxes had its perks. I hired a private investigator. Meet Danny, a former cop who'd seen enough cheating spouses to write a bestseller. Sarah, he said during our first meeting, you're either paranoid, or your gut is trying to tell you something. Let's find out which. 2 weeks later, Danny handed me a folder thick enough to be a novel. Pictures, text message logs, hotel receipts. The whole 9 yards. Her name was Rebecca. She was a junior associate at the firm. 28 years old, 12 years younger than me. Of course. You know that feeling when your stomach drops and your ears start ringing? When your whole world shifts sideways? Yeah, stick around, because what happens next made my head spin too. But I didn't just want a divorce. That would have been too easy. James had taken something from me, my trust, my time, my dignity. So I decided to take everything from him. First step. I needed to understand what I was dealing with. Rebecca wasn't just any junior associate. She was the managing partner's niece. James wasn't just having an affair, he was playing office politics. Classic James, always thinking 10 steps ahead. Well, not this time. I started small. Gathered evidence. Bank statements, credit card bills, hotel receipts. Every Wednesday lunch meeting that mysteriously cost $200 at hotels instead of restaurants. Every business trip where he booked 2 rooms instead of 1. I documented everything. But here's where it gets interesting. Remember how I mentioned I handled our taxes? Well, James had a habit of forgetting to report certain income. Small consulting jobs he did on the side. Cash payments from clients who preferred discretion. I had records of all of it. I played the perfect wife. Better than perfect, actually. Made his favorite meals. Never questioned the late nights. Started taking more interest in his work. How's that big merger case going, honey? I'd ask, watching him lie straight to my face. Meanwhile, I was building my own merger of sorts. Made friends with Rebecca's roommate at their local gym. Started attending the same yoga class as James's secretary. People love to talk, especially when they think they're helping. Found out James and Rebecca had a system. They used a dating app to communicate, thought they were being clever. But they forgot one thing. I had set up James's cloud backup years ago. Every deleted message, every hidden photo, all backed up neatly to our family cloud account. Then I discovered something that changed everything. Rebecca wasn't just sleeping with James. She was sleeping with Thomas Mitchell, yes, that Mitchell. The managing partner himself. Uncle Dearest had no idea his precious niece was playing both sides. Hold on to your seats, because this story's about to get messier than a toddler eating spaghetti. If you're invested in this drama, hit subscribe. Trust me, what comes next is wilder than my ex's excuses. Here's where being the perfect wife really paid off. James had gotten so comfortable with his lies that he never questioned why I volunteered to help plan the firm's annual outdoor charity gala. You know, the one where all the partners show off for their biggest clients. I spent 3 months infiltrating their world. Joined the planning committee. Suggested we hold it at the Boston Common, perfect visibility from all angles. Especially from above. But the skywriter? That was just a distraction. The real plan was already in motion. Remember those tax records I mentioned? I didn't just keep them. I organized them. Created spreadsheets. Built a paper trail that would make an IRS auditor weep with joy. But I wasn't about to become a whistleblower, no, that would be too obvious. Instead, I made friends with Carol from the IRS. Not as an informant, but as a fellow mom from my new tennis club. Funny how people open up when you share their interests. Even funnier how they remember certain details when they later randomly review tax returns. But James gave me an unexpected gift. During one of his late nights, he used our joint credit card to book a hotel. Sloppy. The old James would never have made that mistake. But his new girlfriend was making him careless. I tracked his phone's location, found my iPhone, another account he'd forgotten I had access to. They weren't at the hotel. They were at Rebecca's uncle's beach house. The same beach house where the firm held their private partner meetings. That's when I found it. The real bombshell. Hidden in James's home office, inside an old law school textbook, documents about the firm's biggest client. The type of documents that would interest not just the IRS, but the SEC. If you think this is getting good, imagine what next week's story will be like. One click on that subscribe button is all it takes. I promise it's less commitment than my ex-husband made. I sent James on a guilt trip. You've been working so hard, honey. Why don't you take Rebecca, I mean, your team, to celebrate at Uncle Mitchell's beach house this weekend? The gala preparations are keeping me busy anyway. He bought it. Hook, line, and sinker. While they were gone, I made copies. Not just of the documents in the textbook. Everything. Every file, every email, every message. When you've been married to someone for 12 years, you know all their passwords. Or at least, their password patterns. Perfect weather. Sunny, light breeze, ideal for skywriting. The event was packed. Over 300 guests, including every major client the firm had. James was working the crowd, his arm around Rebecca whenever he thought no one was looking. Little did he know, I had planted USB drives containing selected documents in gift bags for specific guests. The type of guests who would actually read boring legal documents. Like the Attorney General's wife. And that reporter from the Boston Globe who was covering the charity event. At exactly 2:30 p.m., the first message appeared in the sky: James Mitchell sleeps with his client's wives. James nearly choked on his champagne. But that wasn't even the best part. As everyone looked up, their phones buzzed simultaneously. I'd timed it perfectly with the mass email. See, over the past 6 months, I'd collected email addresses from the firm's client list. Not hard when you're on the charity gala committee. The email contained select photos from Danny's investigation, along with some choice financial records. But here's where it gets beautiful. Rebecca, thinking she was about to lose everything, panicked. She ran straight to her Uncle Mitchell, confessing everything, including things I didn't even know about. Like how James had been helping her trade stocks using confidential information from the firm's biggest merger cases. The look on James's face when Mitchell started screaming at him in front of everyone? Priceless. Within hours, the firm's managing partners were in emergency damage control mode. By midnight, #MitchellRoss scandal was trending on Twitter. By Monday morning, the SEC had opened an investigation. James tried calling me 47 times that night. I was too busy having champagne with Danny the Pie, who turned out to be not just good at his job, but surprisingly good company. But the sweetest part? Remember those tax records? Turns out the IRS is very interested in law firms that help clients hide assets in offshore accounts. My friend Carol made sure the audit was very thorough. James lost everything. His job, his reputation, his shot at making partner. The firm threw him under the bus to save themselves. Rebecca got immunity for testifying against both James and her uncle. 3 months after the gala, I'm sitting in my new penthouse apartment, paid for by the Whistleblower reward from the SEC. Turns out reporting securities fraud has some nice perks. But karma wasn't done with James yet. Remember those clients' wives I mentioned in the skywriting? That wasn't just for shock value. Turns out James had a type, married women with wealthy husbands. 3 of them came forward after the gala. Their husbands were, understandably, not pleased. The best part? Rebecca's Uncle Mitchell had no idea she'd been collecting evidence of her own. She had videos, voice recordings, emails. Enough dirt to sink the entire firm. She'd learned from the best. James had taught her well. By Christmas, Mitchell and Ross had dissolved. Most of the partners jumped ship to other firms. The ones who couldn't are probably looking at jail time. All those years of helping clients hide money, dodge taxes, and cover up scandals. It all came crashing down. But here's the twist nobody saw coming. Rebecca. She wasn't just some naive junior associate sleeping her way to the top. She was an undercover reporter working on a story about corruption in top law firms. James hadn't just cheated on me, he'd spilled firm secrets to a journalist. The irony was delicious. Now, every Wednesday at 2 p.m., I have coffee with Carol from the IRS. We laugh about how men like James think they're so clever. Danny joins us sometimes. Turns out he's pretty good at giving relationship advice for someone who catches cheaters for a living. Last week, I saw James working as a legal consultant for a small firm in New Hampshire. Quite a step down from his corner office in Boston. He didn't see me. I was too busy having lunch with his ex-client's wife. You know, the one who hired me to redecorate her house after her divorce? But here's what the show won't capture: the quiet moments. The late nights going through spreadsheets. The fear before hitting send on that mass email. The way your hands shake when you're printing evidence that could ruin lives. They want drama. I get it. But the real story isn't about the skywriter or the scandal. It's about all the women who came after me. We started meeting on Thursdays. Informal at first, just coffee and conversation. Now we have chapters in 12 cities. We call it the Paper Trail Club. Part support group, part strategy session. Last week, a woman from Seattle shared how she caught her CEO husband embezzling pension funds. A month ago, it was a VP's wife from Chicago who discovered her spouse was selling company secrets. The FBI agent who interviewed me back then. She's now running their corporate crimes division. She says our case changed how they approach whistleblowers. Sometimes, she told me, the best evidence comes from people who have nothing left to lose. James tried to contact me last month. Sent a letter through his new lawyer. He wants to clear the air before the Netflix series starts production. Says he's changed. Found God. Wants forgiveness. I sent back a single piece of paper. That original shirt collar with the lipstick stain. Let him figure it out. Remember Rebecca's uncle, Thomas Mitchell? Last Tuesday, he walked into my office. Out of prison early for good behavior. Grey-haired now, wearing an off-the-rack suit. How the mighty fall. You planted the lipstick, he said. Not a question. A statement. I just smiled. The old me would have denied it. The new me? I poured him a drink. You know what the funny thing is? He continued, swirling his scotch. I knew. About James and Rebecca. About all of it. I was waiting for someone to bring it all down. Turns out Mitchell had been looking for a way out for years. The firm had become a monster he couldn't control. But he was too deep in it to blow the whistle himself. So you let me do your dirty work, I said. He smiled. You did it better than I ever could. That's when it hit me. The beach house conveniently empty that weekend. The client files left in plain sight. The way everything fell into place so perfectly. Mitchell had orchestrated his own firm's destruction. Used me as his unwitting agent of chaos. And I'd played right into it. The streaming executives want to change the story. Make it sexier, more dramatic. Add car chases, perhaps a murder attempt. I told them the truth is dramatic enough. A woman scorned, a corrupt law firm, and the old man who played everyone like chess pieces. Sometimes, I told them, the best stories are the ones where everyone thinks they're the hero. Late night at the office. Danny's gone home, but I'm still here, staring at an email that just came in. From Rebecca. Subject line, time you knew everything. She attaches a single document. A mission brief, dated 3 years before I ever found that lipstick stain. FBI Operation Sunlight, a long-term investigation into law firm corruption across the East Coast. Rebecca wasn't just a journalist undercover. She was an FBI agent. Had been from the start. The journalism cover? Just another layer of protection. But here's the real kicker, Carol wasn't just some random IRS agent I befriended at tennis. She was Rebecca's handler. Every coincidental meeting, every casual conversation about tax fraud, all carefully orchestrated. They'd been building a case against Mitchell and Ross for years. But they needed someone on the inside. Someone with access to the right documents. Someone with a motive for revenge. They needed me. My phone rings. It's Danny. You need to see the news, he says. Breaking story, James has been found dead in his New Hampshire apartment. Apparent suicide. Left behind a USB drive with enough evidence to take down 3 more major law firms. The police found a letter addressed to me. Single sentence, you weren't the only one playing the long game. Turns out James wasn't just a corrupt lawyer. According to the USB drive, he'd been working as an informant for years. Not for the FBI, not for the SEC, but for someone much bigger. CIA counterintelligence. White-collar division. Those offshore accounts he helped set up. They weren't just for hiding rich people's money. They were tracking points for following international money laundering. Every client he helped cheat the system. Their data went straight to Langley. Rebecca shows up at my office the next morning. No appointment. She looks different now, sharper, more official. Her FBI badge isn't hidden anymore. James was one of ours, she says. Sort of. We shared him with the CIA. The whole thing, the affair, the scandal, the firm's collapse, it was all part of a larger operation. And me? I ask. Was I part of the operation too? She smiles. That same smile I used to hate when I thought she was sleeping with my husband. You were the wild card, Sarah. The variable nobody could control. That's what made it work. The lipstick stain you planted? Rebecca continues. We planted it first. Then removed it. We knew you'd do it again. Needed you to feel in control. My head spins. Every move I'd made thinking I was so clever, so strategic, had been anticipated. Planned for. We have a job offer for you, Rebecca says, sliding a folder across my desk. Your little revenge consulting firm? It's perfect cover for what we really want you to do. Inside the folder, CIA contractor badge. Special Division, Financial Intelligence Operations. The badge feels heavy in my hands. Heavier than my wedding ring ever did. The old Sarah would have thrown this folder back in my face, Rebecca says. But you're not her anymore, are you? She's right. The woman who planted that lipstick stain died somewhere between the skywriting and the federal investigations. The question is, who am I now? Danny walks in, sees Rebecca, sees the badge in my hand. He doesn't look surprised. You knew? I ask him. He pulls out his own badge. Not FBI. Not CIA. Something else entirely. The logo isn't one I recognize. There's a shadow war happening in the financial world, Sarah, he says. Has been for years. James was just one player. Mitchell and Ross won battlefield. We need people who can fight it without looking like they're fighting. My phone buzzes. Text from Carol, say yes. We need you. Another from Mitchell, time to stop playing in the minor leagues. Even my divorce lawyer sends an email, the real game is just beginning. They were all part of it. Every single person who helped me get my revenge was helping themselves to something bigger. I look at the badge again. Think about James's suicide note. You weren't the only one playing the long game. He knew. He'd always known. The affair, the scandal, my revenge, it was all theater. A play within a play. And now they want me to join the production. Want to know what happens when a revenge consultant becomes a government operative? Hit subscribe. Some stories are too big for just one video. I pick up the badge. Look at Rebecca. At Danny. One condition, I say. I want the truth. All of it. Rebecca smiles. That's why we chose you, Sarah. You never stop until you get to the truth. I sign the papers. And just like that, my revenge story becomes something else entirely. Something bigger. Something darker. But that's a story for another day. If this story taught you anything, let it be this: karma doesn't need help, but sometimes it appreciates a good skywriter. Hit subscribe for more tales of sweet, sweet justice. Trust me, I've got stories that would make your ex's schemes look like amateur hour. The divorce settlement. Let's just say James was very generous. Amazing how agreeable people become when they're facing multiple federal investigations. As for me, I started a consulting business helping people gather evidence for their divorce cases. Turns out there's a huge market for it. Danny handles the surveillance, I handle the strategy, and Carol. Well, Carol keeps an eye out for interesting tax returns. They say success is the best revenge. But I disagree. Success, plus watching your ex-husband's world burn while you roast marshmallows from a safe distance? That's the best revenge. Oh, and that lipstick stain that started it all? I actually planted it there myself. I'd suspected James was cheating for months, I just needed him to get sloppy. Sometimes you have to create your own evidence to find the real proof. Some people say I went too far. That I could have just filed for divorce like a normal person. But normal people don't get penthouse apartments, successful businesses, and the satisfaction of watching justice serve itself on a silver platter. Besides, as my new boyfriend Danny likes to say, sometimes the long game is the only game worth playing. The epilogue. 1 year later. Sarah, you've got a new client, Danny calls out from his office next door. Our business has expanded, we now take up the entire floor of a downtown office building. Revenge Consultants isn't our official name, but that's what people call us. The client is crying. Mascara running, designer handbag clutched tight. I've seen this look before. Let me guess, I say, sliding a box of tissues across my desk, you found something on his phone. She nods. Same story, different characters. But this time, I noticed something interesting on her intake form. Her husband's name? Thomas Mitchell Jr., Rebecca's cousin. Turns out the Mitchell family had more secrets than just Uncle Thomas's indiscretions. Jr. had been running his own side operation, using what he learned from watching his father's firm collapse. But he made one crucial mistake: he didn't know who his wife had hired. You know, I tell her, pouring 2 glasses of wine. Yes, I keep wine in my office now, it helps with the storytelling. I might have some relevant experience with your situation. Our reputation has grown. We're not just divorce specialists anymore. We've become the go-to firm for people who need to prove something but don't know where to start. Corporate whistleblowers. Insurance fraud victims. Even a few celebrities who need to catch stalkers. Danny expanded his team to 15 investigators. Carol. Well, she's still with the IRS, but she teaches seminars now on financial forensics in domestic disputes. I'm usually the guest speaker. James tried to start a competing business in New Hampshire. It failed spectacularly. Turns out having your name associated with multiple federal investigations isn't great for client recruitment. Last I heard, he was writing a book about corporate ethics. The irony would kill me if I wasn't so busy laughing. Rebecca. She won a Pulitzer for her exposé on corruption in law firms. She still sends me Christmas cards. We're not friends, exactly, but we have a mutual respect. After all, we both took down the same corrupt system. She just had a press badge while I had a marriage certificate. The Mitchell and Ross scandal changed how law firms handle internal affairs. New regulations, stricter oversight. They call it the Mitchell Rule: never trust a partner who spends more on hotel rooms than legal books. Here's something I never expected: my revenge actually changed things. Real things. The Mitchell and Ross scandal led to a complete overhaul of how law firms handle client funds. The American Bar Association now requires annual audits specifically looking for the kind of schemes James used to help clients hide money. They even invited me to speak at their annual ethics conference. Imagine that, the scorned wife teaching lawyers about integrity. I declined, obviously. Sent Rebecca instead. She did a whole presentation on the red flags of financial infidelity. Used my case as the primary example. My phone buzzes. It's a text from Danny. You won't believe who just walked into our lobby. James's new wife. Yeah, he got remarried. To another lawyer, of course. Younger than Rebecca even. But here's the kicker, she's not here because she thinks he's cheating. She's here because she found some interesting documents in their home office. History doesn't just repeat itself. Sometimes it comes back with better evidence. Do you ever feel bad about what you did? People ask me. I think about James, about the firm, about all those clients who lost millions when their illegal schemes came to light. Then I think about the reforms our case triggered. The whistleblower programs that got strengthened. The junior associates who no longer have to choose between their ethics and their careers. No, I tell them, I feel bad that it took me so long to do it. Speaking of taking too long. If you haven't hit subscribe yet, what are you waiting for? A skywriter to spell it out for you? The thing about revenge is that everyone expects it to be loud. Dramatic. A big confrontation with screaming and broken plates. But the best revenge? It's quiet. Patient. It's 1,000 tiny paper cuts delivered with a smile. James taught me that. Not intentionally, of course. But watching him manipulate the legal system for years showed me how real power works. It's not about who can shout the loudest, it's about who can wait the longest. They're calling it the Mitchell effect. when one person's revenge sparks a corporate revolution. Law firms across the country started getting nervous. Internal audits became the new trend. Not because they wanted to, but because no one wanted to be the next Mitchell and Ross. My inbox is flooded daily with stories. Not just from people wanting to catch cheating spouses, but from employees who spotted irregularities in their company's books. From assistants who've been asked to just file these papers differently. From people who finally feel brave enough to speak up. Last month, I got an interesting call. The FBI's white-collar crime division wanted to consult. Apparently, my methods for tracking James's financial misdeeds were innovative. They're developing a new training program for forensic accountants. Guess who they asked to help design it? Danny and I got married last spring. Small ceremony, nothing fancy. Well, except for the skywriter. That was his idea, wrote "Will you marry me?" above the same spot where I'd exposed James a year earlier. He said it was poetic justice. I said it was cheesy. We both laughed. Carol officiated. Turns out she's ordained. Rebecca covered it for her paper's lifestyle section, From Revenge to Romance, How One Woman's Quest for Justice Found Love. Bit dramatic for my taste, but it sold papers. Yesterday, I received a letter. James's new wife, remember her, the one who came to our office? She didn't just find documents. She found that document. The original one I planted the lipstick on. He'd kept it. All these years. She asked me why I thought he saved it. I told her the truth. Some people keep souvenirs of their victories. James kept a reminder of his biggest defeat. Our firm keeps growing. We've opened offices in New York and Chicago. Turns out there's no shortage of people needing help exposing the truth. But we're selective. This isn't about revenge anymore, it's about justice. They say living well is the best revenge. They're wrong. Living well is just the beginning. The best revenge is changing the system that let people like James thrive in the first place. And me? I'm just getting started. If this story made you think about the skeletons in your company's closet, hit subscribe. Because sometimes, the most important stories aren't about revenge, they're about revelation. The lipstick stain that started it all? I had it framed. It hangs in my office now. A reminder that sometimes the smallest things can trigger the biggest changes. James still doesn't know I planted it. Some secrets are worth keeping forever. But that's a story for another day. Harvard Business School, fall semester. Professor Williams stands in front of 200 students, PowerPoint glowing behind her. On the screen? A photo of the skywriting above Boston Common. Ethics in Business, the Mitchell and Ross case study, now required reading for first-year law students across the country. They analyze everything, the financial trails, the cover-ups, the systemic failures that let it happen. But they always miss the point. They focus on the firm's collapse, the regulatory changes, the new compliance laws. They don't see what really matters, how one person's refusal to stay quiet can ripple through an entire industry. The changes kept coming. First law firms, then accounting firms, then investment banks. Everyone started looking over their shoulders, wondering if they had their own Sarah in their midst. Good. Corporate whistleblower programs tripled their rewards. Anonymous reporting systems got upgraded. HR departments actually started taking complaints seriously. Amazing what the fear of public humiliation can do. Last week, I got invited to give a guest lecture at James's alma mater. The topic? Ethics and accountability in modern legal practice. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The students asked great questions. One raised his hand, "Weren't you afraid of retaliation?" I smiled. The thing about people who abuse power? They never expect their victims to fight back. That's their weakness. We started a foundation. The Truth Project. We fund legal support for whistleblowers, provide resources for gathering evidence, offer scholarships to law students focusing on ethics. Rebecca serves on the board. So does Carol. Even some of James's former clients contribute, anonymously, of course. Guilt's a powerful motivator. This morning's headline, Mitchell Jr.'s firm under investigation. Seems his wife, our client, found more than just suspicious documents. She found a pattern. Like father, like son. Danny's phone hasn't stopped ringing. Turns out when one Mitchell falls, they all start looking around for parachutes. Netflix called yesterday. They want to turn our story into a limited series. The perfect blend of revenge and corporate takedown, they said. The producer asked who I'd want to play me. I suggested Rebecca. She knows the story better than anyone, and she's quit journalism to pursue acting. Another plot twist nobody saw coming.